Hello, dear friends. Hello, dear listeners. Thank you for listening to Radio Maria Nairobi, a Christian voice in your home, 107.3 FM. This is the Bible Journey program. I am your host and presenter, Sister Beatrice from the Daughters of St. Paul. And again, this Monday morning, it's my great joy to be with you as we continue to share, to study, and to love the Word of God together. So we are continuing our journey with the book of the prophet Hosea. We the book of the prophet Hosea. Actually, we began this journey, this prophet who talks about God's faithful love for all of us. Because as we already saw, actually this is the second prophet that we are looking at. We already had some time with the prophet Amos, and this is the second prophet we are looking at. And remember, for the prophets, as I told you, I'm not following the way they are put chronologically in the Bible. We are following the way they came in their ministry historically. And actually, the prophet Amos, the prophet Hosea are the two pre-exilic prophets, as we already saw, meaning that they prophesied or they did their mission before the exile, especially the northern kingdom exile, which happened earlier than the one of the southern kingdom. And also the prophet Hosea and the prophet Amos both prophesied in the northern kingdom. They prophesied in the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, where you have the 10 tribes, the kingdom of Judah with the 2 tribes. And already we saw that actually Hosea was a native of the northern kingdom. And also, and his prophetic work was mainly on the social, moral, and particularly the spiritual situation of his people. Remember, the prophet Amos gave us a lot of emphasis on what we call social, the social aspect, the social justice among the people. So this is also extremely important for us to know that even though also the prophet Hosea spoke a lot about those social issues, talked about moral issues, but also he talked about the spiritual situation. And that is why for him, we see that the image that he uses very strongly, the symbol that he used to drive home his message was the symbol of God's love that is symbolized in the institution of marriage. And we are also told by our biblical scholars that actually the prophet Hosea was the first prophet to describe the relationship between Israel and God as a relationship of husband and wife. And of course, this shows us that actually he had a very special message in terms of helping us understand what we would call a spiritual relationship, a spiritual experience of God. That is also very important, because remember, as I have always shared with you in this program, in religion there are things that we look at, and especially in our own Christian religion. When we looked earlier at the books of the historical books, the Pentateuch, the books of the law, we see a God who enters into a relationship with his people and gives them some guidelines. Let's use the word guidelines, or even commandments if you so wish, on how to relate with him, how to make him happy, how to have that experience of God. And actually there is nothing wrong with that, only that these rules, these regulations, these commandments are given to us as human beings who are also created in the image of God. So we are supposed to live them in a certain way. It's not robotic, it's not just a fulfillment of what we say, fulfilling the law and the prophet, but it's also a guideline that you can give even to a child, so that you're expecting them to grow to a certain maturity, to be able even to go what we call autopilot, in the sense that already you know what is expected of you. You don't need to keep reading and looking. And when you come to the prophets, this relationship with God is taken a notch higher, where we are told that it's not enough just to observe the commandments, to observe them in a literal manner. But actually, what is supposed to happen is that we are supposed to employ that heart of God in relating with one another, even in serving God. That the principle that should guide us is love, because God has always looked at us with his love, as we have seen freeing the Israelites from Egypt, forgiving them over and over again after they have failed, bringing in the prophets, reminding them of his love in spite of what has happened. So the prophets teach us something, that our observance of the law should not just be literal, should not be just something that we do without bringing life to it. So we give life to things. If we are going to offer sacrifices to Yahweh, if you are going to the house of God, we have to make sure that we're in good terms with our brothers, with our sisters. We care for them, not just good terms in the terms that we are not quarreling, but because we do care for them. Then, of course, you already saw the wisdom and poetic literature. The wisdom and poetic literature says it's true. We have the law, we have the prophets, but we also have to ask ourselves, with what motivations